What's going on, guys? Alpha the Wizard back at it with another video. Today we're going to be continuing the meta history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And today we're on 2008 Dark Arm Return format. In the last video we covered Jerry Wang's Dark Arm Return list, which in my opinion was the more optimized list of Dark Arm Return. And today we're going to be covering an FTK deck. There was a plethora of FTK decks that emerged this format because it was just so incredibly fast, and this one specifically is going to be called Magical Explosion FTK. It's a deck a lot of people don't really know about, but it did exist at this time and it was really consistent at what it did. However, Dark Arm Return was just a little bit more consistent, and being able to side cards like DD Crow was able to just sometimes interrupt the combo to a point where if you interrupt it, they can't really come back. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop right in. So this is very similar to Diamond Dude Turbo, however, it's a lot faster. So kicking things off, we have 3 copies of Destiny Hero Dogma. Now, Destiny Hero Dogma was just infinitely better than Plasma in this deck because it also has a really cool effect. When this card is special summon, you have to tribute 3 monsters to do so, but you have your opponent's life points, making it a lot easier to facilitate the FTK. So in addition to the Destiny Heroes and Elemental engine, we have, of course, 1 copy of Elemental Hero Stratos. Now, Stratos was just the central key to a lot of these Destiny Hero decks with the engine because it searches any of them. And then, of course, we have the heart and soul of this deck, and that is Dark Magician of Chaos. This card really is the heart and soul because this allows you to like recycle Dimension Fusion over and over and over again, very similar to how Diamond Dude Turbo did. You're going to see a lot of similarities between this deck and Diamond Dude Turbo, however, they are 2 completely different entities, so just keep that in mind. Now, in addition to the Destiny Hero engine, the only other one that we play is Destiny Hero Disc Commander. And we need Disc Commander because this card is just going to facilitate, being able to draw 2 free cards. We're going to pretty much be drawing through like our whole entire deck with this deck. So basically, it's very easy to see a Monster Reborn or a Premature Burial, making Destiny Hero Disc Commander a lot more easily accessible. And we don't play very many monsters. The only other 3 monsters that we play in this deck that we can afford to play consistently is 3 copies of Cyber Valley. Now, Cyber Valley came out in Phantom Darkness, and this card is just really, really insane in this deck because we're essentially just going to be abusing Dimension Fusion. So with that being said, Cyber Valley in tandem with Machine Duplication is just one of the god tier combos in this deck. And yeah, once you get the engine rolling, it's really, really hard to stop. The only card that can really do it on the opponent's turn or on your turn from the opponent is DD Crow. That is the only card, because if they crow something, then chances are, you're not going to be able to facilitate the full FTK. You might be able to keep going to an extent, but Crow really, really hurts. So that's it for the monsters. Now on to the spells. The deck only played 3 traps, which was 3 copies of Explosion. So for the spells, we play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. This is newly released in Phantom Darkness, so, it just helps us to draw through our engine way, way faster. And then also, with the Allure of Darkness, another cool thing about this card is if you don't have any more darks in deck and you don't have one in hand, but you need the perfect amount of spell cards in the graveyard, you could simply just Allure, draw 2, and discard your hand after setting Explosion, of course, and then you can get your spells in the grave that way for the Explosion FTK. And then, of course, we got to play 3 copies of Destiny Draw. It just inherently synergizes with the Destiny Hero engine. And then we do have a little bit more draw power. We're playing 3 trade-ins. Now, we don't play like Diamond Dude or anything like that. So 3 trade-ins are mainly for the Destiny Hero Dogmas. But if you were to put this deck together, you would see why we need 3, even though we don't play very many monsters. It's very, very necessary. And even if you do end up in a position where you don't have a monster to use these cards for, you also have access to magical stone excavation, so they make for really good discard fodder as well. And it might seem really neg, but that is just how this deck works. But in addition to magical stone excavation, the deck also plays 3 copies of hand destruction. Some opted to only play 2, but there are a lot of instances where you end up with like a dead trade-in in your hand, and you can just essentially trade in the trade-in with hand destruction. And then also in tandem with hand destruction, we do play a single copy of card destruction. The card is at 1 at this time, so you can't play any more, but card destruction is so good in this deck. But yeah, in addition to that, we do opt to play 3 copies of Reasoning. This card is basically kind of like an FTK, because we can like mill through almost our whole entire deck, getting all the spell cards in the graveyard that we possibly need. So if I haven't explained it already, how this deck basically FTKs is Explosion deals 200 damage to your opponent for each spell card in your graveyard. So essentially, we're just trying to get through our whole entire deck with a bunch of spells, and then set Explosion for the FTK. But then, in addition to Reasoning, we do play 3 copies of Monster Gate. Why not? It's very necessary, because it's the same purpose as Reasoning, just milling through our entire deck. Then, in addition to Monster Gate, we do play 3 copies of Machine Duplication, essentially because we're playing Cyber Valley. Now, Machine Dupe plus Cyber Valley, in most cases, if you see these 2 cards together, it's usually game. Now, to be completely honest, like, it just gets you so much advantage that the opponent's not going to be able to do anything to stop your FTK. And then we do play the Monster Reborn and the Premature Burial, mainly because we're playing Dark Magician of Chaos and Disc Commander. But then, you might wonder, you know, since we are playing cards like Reasoning and Monster Gate, what happens if we do mill our Magical Explosion? Well, we do play 2 copies of Feather of the Phoenix. Sorry for the mismatch rarities. This is a very old card. However, Feather of the Phoenix allows us to just discard a card, target a card in a graveyard, and return it to the top of the deck. And then we are able to use a card like Hand Destruction, or Destiny Draw, or Trade-In, to simply just draw the Explosion we just put back to the top. And 1 or even 2 copies of Explosion in most cases is game. So yeah, that's really it for all the spell cards. Now, one thing that I must show you in this deck is, like I said in the very beginning, we don't play very many trap cards, we don't play many monsters, the whole deck is just flooded with spells. So the only 3 trap cards we play is 3 copies of Magical Explosion. Explosion is the heart and soul of this deck and how we are able to facilitate this FTK. Because if you're not sure how Explosion works, it states you can only activate this card when you have no cards in your hand, so card destruction and hand destruction synergize really well, and you can inflict 200 points of damage to your opponent's life points for each spell card in your graveyard. So even if you're not able to draw through your whole entire deck, simply resolving 2 explosions might just be enough for game. But yeah, so that's really it for this video. I am going to be posting replays on how this deck works, some matches with me and one of my friends, because he is a huge fan of this deck. And I'm going to be playing Dark Arm Return, so definitely stay tuned for those replays of the matches that we played from 2008. But with all that being said, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you got some value from this video for the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And with all that being said, I will see you in the next one.